The Twelfth Man is a Norwegian film from a couple of years ago. It's set in World War II. It's primarily in Norwegian, although there is, of course, some German. There's a very tiny amount of English, some Swedish, and even some Sami. And who knew that Hugh Jackman spoke fluent Norwegian? Hi there, my name's Lamont. Welcome to the Reykjavik Review, where I discuss foreign language TV shows and movies such as this one. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, then hang around, check out some other videos, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Guys, I know it's not what you're here for, but just a very, very quick update. 3 weeks ago, I said I'd be uploading every Friday US time. I didn't meet that last week, and there's a very good reason for it, I promise. Australia is under catastrophic bushfire threat at the moment, which means all sorts of things change. One is that we have to be ready to leave our house at any moment, and I'm not making that up. That is actually what we're advised by the emergency services. Another is that my son was kept home from school because it's unsafe for all the kids to be at school on a day like that. So a lot of things have changed to our schedule. And it might seem a bit strange to go from talking about that to reviewing a film, but this film concerns equally, if not more, extreme conditions, particularly for this one Norwegian officer in World War II who's trying to survive a manhunt from the Nazis in the extreme Norwegian winter. It has to be one of the most amazing stories to come out of World War II, and I say that fully aware that millions and millions of people were affected by World War II, and therefore there must be millions of stories, and that some of those must be absolutely incredible. But this film does tell one of those incredible stories. The Twelfth Man is an entirely Norwegian production, so unless you're really into Nordic cinema, it probably doesn't star anyone you've heard of. But like I said, it does star Hugh Jackman, or at least his Norwegian cousin. Seriously, I'm aware that the guy doesn't actually look that much like Hugh Jackman when you look closely, but some of the shots, and with the facial hair that he sports for most of the film, I thought it was him. Being an entirely Norwegian production, you might expect that some of the technical aspects of the film would not be up to the same standards as we're used to seeing from the USA. So I'm talking about things like sound design, focus pulling, costume design, production design, but with The Twelfth Man, it's absolutely on a par with anything I've seen. It's extremely competent. And you mightn't think that that sounds so uncommon, but I've seen plenty of films to come out of the US which aren't as well lit as this film. And when I say well lit, I don't mean bright. I mean the lighting convinces me that it's real, that it could actually be happening at the place that it's supposed to be happening. And remember that this is set in World War II, so the lighting cannot look like it's happening in 2017, and at no point does it look like that. It looks like it's happening in World War II, but it still looks incredible, so it's just an excellent job. The music is a very similar story. It sounds 21st century without being out of place for a film set in World War II. I wondered for a while if it was by the same composer as the music for Coherence, because I knew that Coherence was written by a Norwegian composer named Kristin Dyrud. It's not by that composer, but it actually has a pretty similar feel, considering how different these films are. There's a very Nordic way of doing scores that is just, it's really to my tastes. Talking about accurate and fitting, I've never ever believed that a film needs to be realistic in order to be good, and often I find the most realistic films the most boring. But with a film like this, it's based on a true story. Obviously, it does need to be realistic, and it really follows through, particularly linguistically. This is one area that a lot of films take shortcuts on. They'll have something like, for example, the Nazis speaking English. This film has the Nazis speaking German, the Norwegians speaking Norwegian, the English officers speaking English, they even have some Swedish, and even Sami, which it's obviously hard to get native speakers of, but it all works really well. The performances from almost all the actors are at the very least decent, and in some cases I'd say very good. So when it comes to the elements of this film, how it looks, what languages they're speaking, how it sounds with regards to musical score and the performances, all this is really good in this film. However, the danger of true story films is that they ironically often lose their story. They have a plot, yes, things happen in a certain order, but they lose their sort of one sentence tagline. If someone were to ask you, what's that film about, you could only tell them what happens in the film. You couldn't actually tell them what the themes are. In my opinion, those films only ever feel okay. You can't feel like you hate them because you excuse anything that doesn't happen in the film for the fact that that's what actually happened. But after watching them, you never feel like you've really watched a film. Gladly, The Twelfth Man does not fall into that trap. There are some very clear themes here, ways that the writers and the director want you to think about things that are happening in the film. When I say them now, they'll sound pretty cheesy, but trust me that they're really nicely handled in this film. Themes like not giving up hope, not taking the easier option, but even from the Nazi side, themes like pride and hubris and how that brings people down. So while it did have themes that I prefer a true story film to have, I don't think it really nailed those themes as well as it could have. If we compare it to, say, Joyeux Noël or Chernobyl, both of those productions take a little bit more liberty with the details of the actual events, but both of them absolutely nail their themes. Whereas The Twelfth Man has the themes, yes, and we can cling to those themes. We lose the sense of them a little bit with the time of this film. This film covers quite a large period of time, and it is at 130 minutes, not a short film. And I feel like we lose the thread of those themes from beginning to end a little bit. And don't hear me wrong, it's not that I don't like long films. Most of my favourite films are very nearly 3 hours. But with this film, it feels like the amount of time that it takes actually detracts from the weight a little bit. It's counterintuitive. In addition, there's quite a few scenes that feel like they just go on a minute or two too long. And if we're talking about 8 to 12 scenes, we're talking about 20 minutes that didn't need to be in the film, and it would have felt weightier if they weren't in there. There is another way that I could see them tying this film with a little bit of a tighter bow, and it is the Sami element. Some Sami people crop up towards the end of the film, and it's a really, really nice touch, but I'm not sure why we don't see that at the beginning, and I'm not talking about the true story element of it, just the slightest introduction to the Sami right at the start. I can even picture the scene that they might have had, and I think that would have brought a tighter feel to the whole film. But those shortcomings are not enough to ruin this amazing story and the fact that it's really beautifully shot, edited, scored, acted. I deliberately didn't get into the actual events of this story because I wouldn't do it justice, but this movie is worth watching just so that you know this story happened. It's a story worth knowing in itself, but the film's also worth watching because it's very tense. It's enjoyable in the way that movies are enjoyable, but be warned, it's not enjoyable in the classical sense, as in you won't enjoy watching all of this film. There are some very torturous scenes in the sort of 127 hours style. But it is a really good film. It's probably one of the better true story films that I've seen, and I'll be watching it again when I resume my Swedish studies early next year. In fact, I would say I suggest that you watch it as well. Suggest is going to be part of a new ranking system that I give to series and films. I'm not going to tell you where it comes in the overall ranking system. You're going to have to figure that out for yourself. Guys, thanks for watching this Norwegian film review. If you like foreign films or series, then that's what this channel is all about. So consider subscribing. Because there's so few of you at this time, I do see every single one of them, and every single one means something to me. So I really appreciate it if you could do that. Also leave a comment, like, all that kind of stuff. But if you're interested in learning how to speak, say, Norwegian or any other language, then I do have a slightly bigger channel about language learning. It's called Days of French and Swedish, so head over and check that out. But for right now, I hope you enjoyed this film if you do go out and see it, and I hope you enjoyed this review, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.